Just telling you, both of them will be allowed.
Jesus.
Everything in the Bay Area is
Okay, do I have to do Pizza for 12.
Come over here. Hello. Yeah. There you go. Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. There we go.
Yeah?
Checking for live.
This is for her.
You want to just...
Fun. Can you tell me where I can get the tickets for the ending? I can't. I don't know where I went. Do we have to check in? This is only our second time. No. The other one, it was so crowded. We just
No, you don't. Find a seat anywhere you can.
They are online.
I saw them there for $30. I thought I could get it here.
You'll want to talk to Jessica. She's in the glasses right here.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be sitting here for you.
Yeah, you see the tablet in front of her?
How close are we?
On the right side here, the other person down.
Okay, yeah.
She's the one that's doing both normal club membership and Findig registration. So if you just talk to her, she should get you set up.
Going online.
Okay. Yeah, so you should be able to talk to her, and if you haven't gotten your card yet, you joined online, she should also have that. You're not really in a huge rush to do it right this second. I am going to start the meeting, so if you want to do it right now, you're more than welcome to. If you want to wait until later,
Looks like she's ready.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Just walked through the first meeting.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
My name's Luke.
I'll be back.
Can everyone hear me? You can hear me. Hello everyone. We are going to get the meeting started now. Thanks for all your patience. We're starting a little late, but as you can probably tell, we're here in a new venue. There are a couple little things that we had to figure out. But welcome to our new meeting spot. We're a little bit oddly set up, and we will work out some kinks for next time. We are back. Just a reminder, next month we will not be back here. We're going to be in Natomas for Findig. While we're on that topic, today is going to be the last chance for you to get your discounted in-person club meeting Findig tickets. If you're so inclined and haven't done so yet, please see Modesta. Modesta, do you mind letting people... Modesta's over here. If you need to see her or Donna next to her about Findig or club membership registration, they're over there. And our fellow club member Eric Thomas wasn't able to be with us today because he's sick, but he recently went to Norway and brought some fish with him from our club. And that club wanted everyone to know how grateful they are for everything. we were able to raise $400 with our bags of fish that were sent over. So a big thank you to anyone who gave Eric fish. Right, I should do introductions. I'm Luke, I'm the president. Hi everyone. Nico, vice president. We've got Modesta as secretary, you saw her earlier. Joey Soria is our treasurer. And then down the line, all the way at the end, we've got Joe Murchison on the board. Is Jan over there? Jan's over there also. Over here on the other side, we've got Aaron and Matt. Matt is inside the aquarium room. Hi, Matt. Amisa is over here. Jessica? Right. That's right. We have Jessica also. She's not with us today. She's on her way down to Southern California to attend a swap meet put on by a friendly club down there, the coast. Who else am I missing? Hi, Dawn. There you are. Thanks to Dawn for bringing our screen and projector for the day. We all came together pretty smoothly to make this thing happen in a short time frame, so big thank you to everyone here on the board. Everyone put in work, and here we are. Here's to a new successful meeting place. The new website is now live. Nico, does the .info redirect now also?
Everything's on the website should basically been up yesterday according to the website. We have a new website and we have it hopefully like should have been yesterday.
So I encourage everyone to check it out. New SacramentoAquariumSociety.com. The website looks different. Looks pretty nice. Thank you to Nico for making that happen over the course of the last month. We're chugging right along. So without further ado, we have Alex Rhodes here with us today. Give her a warm welcome. She comes from Chicago. We've been hanging out. She's a great photographer and works at Amazonas in Coral. She's going to tell us a little bit about all the things media. For those that don't know, Amazonas is probably the leading freshwater magazine. Incredible photos, great articles. If you don't already have a subscription, you should consider getting one.
Yes. Okay. Is this guy, what do we need to do here?
This is
Oh, okay, there we go.
to the speakers.
Okay.
Did you already? Okay.
Yeah, I've got this guy on. Do I need to hit anything? We're good? Okay. Great. All right. That'll work. All right, how loud is this? We on? Nope. Okay, I think this is not on. Oh, there it is. Wow. Okay, is this loud enough? Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Yes? Wonderful. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. I know it's kind of crazy when you have a new location, so thanks for making it out anyway. It's a lot of fun. So The title may not sound very exciting, but I promise we're going to go some cool places while we're here today. So yeah, just a teeny bit about me and what I do. As Luke said, I work for Coral and Amazonas magazines. We're part of Aquatic Media Press. That's like our parent company. Coral has been around in both German and English language edition for the last 22 years, and Amazonas is 14 years old this year. So we just took over when James Lawrence passed away a year and a half ago for Coral, or 2 years ago for Coral, so now we run both of them. So I'm an associate editor at both magazines. I also do our ad sales and our YouTube channel. So that's what I get to do for Coral and Amazonas. I also work for another magazine based out of Australia. It's an ocean conservation magazine, and that comes out quarterly. And that's kind of one of the main reasons that I get to do a lot of scuba diving and saltwater dive travel is through that magazine. So we will be doing a little bit of that as well today. Additionally, I started an ocean conservation company back in 2017 called Blue Ring. The goal of this was to make ocean conservation a little bit more accessible and fun and inexpensive for everybody, because there are a lot of huge topics that seem like we can't do anything to help, and it kind of polarizes everybody. So it's a fun thing that you can do. The sort of initial idea behind it was to just have an easy membership. So it's a $25 annual membership, and you can marry the ocean. So it's a way to show your commitment to a water resource, and you get a blue ring or a pendant or a pin, and then every year I donate to a conservation nonprofit. And I've kind of branched out into more freshwater stuff too, and donated to conservation fisheries a couple years back. So yeah, those are my three main gigs, and all of that collectively lets me travel a lot, which is a ton of fun. So I'm going to start by taking you to Hawaii with me a few years ago. So this was a presentation and trip that eventually wound up turning itself into a story. So I was in Hawaii for a film project, and then decided that I might as well go exploring while I was there. So this all kind of took a very random turn, because I wasn't expecting to do anything freshwater related while I was there. It just kind of happened. So as I was kind of getting ready to go to Hawaii, I decided to look up what kind of freshwater fish species there are. And it turns out there are about 45 species of freshwater fish in Hawaii, but only 5 of those are native, and only 3 of them are endemic. So it's really not a lot. So I thought, well, there must be a way to see these, right? So I started looking up different papers about them and found out that all of these natives are gobies, and 4 of those are waterfall climbing gobies. So this already had a story built into it. So I initially found out about these gobies because I was reading an article about this place. Akaka Falls is 442 feet tall, and there are actually gobies that live at the top of it for breeding. So there's no other way to get up to the top of a waterfall if you happen to be a goby other than climb yourself up the falls, which is really insane when you think about it. So like a human equivalent of this would be a human's free-scaling something twice the height of Yosemite with water pounding them in the face the entire way. Like, it's insane that that's even possible. And these gobies are just incredible. And this is a 5-inch fish, mind you. So this is really impressive. And I thought, okay, I have to try to find the fish. So, oh yeah, about this map. So they don't just tell you where to go find waterfall climbing gobies. That's not a thing. So I found this paper, and I overlaid an actual map of Hawaii on top of their collection sites and found myself a few potential waterfalls to go visit. Didn't have a ton of time, so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't something really hard to get to that didn't have a lot of chance of success. So settled on this really cool place called Anamea Falls. So this is by Hilo, so it's on Kona, Big Island. And it's part of a biosphere nature reserve. And so I didn't really want to like go climb through their waterfall water feature. I didn't think they'd appreciate me doing that very much. So I found the spot where the waterfall dumps out into the ocean and started up the waterfall instead of down the waterfall instead. So this is Anamea Bay, and within 10 minutes of being there, found one of the first gobies. So they're not the most beautiful of the gobies, but it's still fun to find them. So this is the Sandwich Island sleeper goby. It is a native. It is not endemic, but it is a native. So they do exist quite a few other places on islands in the Pacific. You can see it's kind of a cryptic brown fish, very flat. They get about this size. So it is actually a food fish for a lot of people there as well. But it was cool to find one right off the bat. Then a little farther into the falls, I found this guy. So I do a lot of messing around with my iPhone before I actually do real footage, which is probably not advisable, but you know, it's okay. I haven't killed a phone yet. So here we go. So this is just me dumping my phone in the water. And lo and behold, we have our second goby. So this was also quite large, about this size fish, but obviously a totally different species. It's got this really chunky head, the really big lips, and if you see them from the underneath, they've got really defined pelvic fins, so really good for helping them get up the waterfall. Now this is one of the larger species, so they don't get super far up the falls. This is more a fish that stays like within the first, I don't know, 30, 40 feet up. But it was a good way to start looking into where else I could see it. So this turned out to be Pacific River goby. This is a native as well, of course, which is great. And I got to see adults and juveniles. So these are adult pictures, and then the juveniles are a little bit more zebra stripy, obviously quite a bit smaller, but in the same waterway. Now these were not really the fish that I wanted to see. I wanted to find the taller waterfall climbers, and eventually was able to spot one. So this is where Anemea Falls actually dumps out into the ocean. So this is slightly brackish water here. And finally found this guy. So Stenogobius hawaiiensis is an endemic waterfall climber, and these guys can get about 100, 150 feet up the falls and then live at the top until they breed. So their whole life cycle is amphidromous. So they breed in fresh waters. Their larvae get swept out into the sea for anywhere between a month and a year, and then as they're growing and they're big enough to actually fight against that current, they swim back up into their waterfall habitat. So I've got a little bit of footage of this guy that I compiled. This is not phone footage. I went back with the proper camera after I found them with the phone. And yeah, so you kind of get an idea of what they look like. It's not a big fish, but I mean, imagine this thing using its mouth and its pelvic fins to kind of suction its way. Yeah, you can see how defined the pelvic fins are. All the way up a waterfall. So one of the interesting things about these guys that I found out after doing more research is that their diets are very different. So the species that don't go as far up the falls tend to be more like benthic carnivores, and the ones that spend more time climbing the falls are more herbivorous. And the thought here is that when gobies are climbing up waterfalls, they need to be able to eat along the way. So if they're scraping biocover off as they're going up the fall, it's a way to still maintain some kind of nutrient level instead of just burning through all of it. Because I can't even imagine how much energy you would have to burn through doing that. So yeah, that was a study that I found while looking into this. So it's pretty interesting. These are the two species that I didn't find while I was there. These are some of the taller waterfall climbers that you'll find all the way up at like 400 or 500 feet. They're quite nice looking. So there's a Sicyoptera species and a Lentipes. The one on the bottom, the Lentipes, that's the nuptial male. They don't look that vibrant when they're not in breeding colors, but it's still quite a pretty fish. And neither of them are particularly large, or like 5 inches or less. And yeah, scale waterfalls. Anyway, this was a kind of unexpected story to get to do for Amazonas because I wasn't there for fresh water. So sometimes these places turn out to be a bit of an unexpected adventure. The next place we're going to go is Indonesia. So recently, about a year and a half, no, not even, back in August, had a chance to go to Komodo. Komodo is, of course, a very unique set of islands, and that is very well known for its Komodo dragons. So they have this fun mural at the airport of their Komodo dragons. But that's not what I was going there for. So hold on, I've got to get this figured out. We'll try this instead. Oh, there we go. So Indonesia has a lot of incredible reefs. That's obviously what it's known for. But I was there because I was in the process of putting a book together. So this is my first book, which I'm excited about. It's called Souls, which stands for Stories of Our Underwater Legends. And the cool thing about the dive industry, like as a scuba diver, is that it's actually a very young industry. So you have the chance to still meet people who started the industry. Like that's not a thing you can do in many sports. And some of the people who are on our expedition were people that I would consider sort of the founders of the industry. So probably my favorite of the group is this amazing lady. This is Dr. Sylvia Earle. She is turning 90 this year and still does at least as many dives as I do every single day when we were on this Indonesia trip. So if you're ever like, oh, I'm too old to start scuba diving, nonsense. It's a lie. Go do it. So she's incredible. She's an oceanographer and has some really amazing stories to tell. So she was with us. Michael, the next guy, that's my boss at the other magazine. Michael Au is a very famous underwater photographer and has spent the last 30 years making dive travel and underwater photography more accessible to people around the world. Then there's David Duboulet and Jennifer Hayes, this couple at the bottom. They're National Geographic photographers. David Duboulet is actually the most published underwater photographer anywhere in the world, and he's had the most covers of National Geographic of anybody. So really an incredible career, absolutely prolific photographer. And his partner, Jennifer Hayes, is a fisheries biologist and does sort of like the science side of all of his stories. So they're a great team. And then these two are amazing. So Richard Pyle on the top and Brian Green on the bottom. You may have heard of them before, but they do really the coolest deep water stuff. So they're both rebreather divers, very technical divers, and they spend most of their time around Hawaii and the greater Pacific region exploring deep reefs below 400 feet. So stuff that nobody's really doing. And in addition to just going there, actually having the capacity to do photo and video that can be used for research purposes and collecting samples. So I think between the two of them, I mean, Richard Pyle has named probably more marine fish species than anybody alive today. And between him and Brian, it's just constant. They're constantly finding new species. So this was our group of people on the trip. So I'll kind of keep talking as I show photos. So Indonesia, in general, is a really spectacular place to be able to go diving. The diversity is unmatched, and it's still one place in the world that is fairly stable in terms of reef health. So you don't see much bleaching. There are not many bleaching events going on in Indonesia. A lot of that is because of the way and the location that Indonesia is at. It's surrounded by a lot of extremely deep water. So deep water is, of course, always much colder than shallow water. So even when they have warm water weather events, they have these upwellings of cold all the way around it. So it protects a lot of Indonesia from heating up to the level that, say, the Caribbean does. So they really don't experience the bleaching that we see in a lot of other places. Really like stunning coral cover on a pretty regular basis. And so while we were there, we spent a lot of time, of course, underwater, but also a lot of time topside. So part of the project was that we were recording sort of on-the-go memoirs with all of these people. So we came away with about 14 hours of footage of them talking that's recorded, both video and audio, and then collated all of that into the book that's now out. So I would actually like this to become a whole series because there are some really incredible people in the dive industry that have so many more stories to tell. And a lot of them have overlap in the aquarium trade too. And it would be nice to see more of those stories be accessible. In the meantime, we got to do all of this while diving on some of the most incredible reefs I've seen in a while. As I mentioned, the diversity is really unbelievable. There was a lot more sponge cover than I've seen in a lot of other places, and just non-photosynthetics in general that I sort of wasn't expecting to see. Of course, when you're in the shallows, there's a lot of it, but it's a ton of soft coral cover as well. And even in the middle of the day, you see polyps extended and all the corals are out. So it's kind of an indicator that there's a lot of food in the water and that the current is generally ripping. So you have to kind of plan your dives accordingly so that you don't get caught in extreme current. Beautiful hard coral cover, really lovely coral heads. This is only in about 45 feet of water. Yeah, huge schools of chromis, damsels, everything you could want. Yeah, it's one of those places that's kind of just an explosion of life on a regular basis. And there's no shortage of lovely things to see while you're there. So one of the, oh, this is fun. So this is David. This is David Duboulay photographing that reef in the photo before. And part of what was so neat about this trip was that we came away with a lot of stories that I wasn't expecting to have. So one of them was actually about deep sea mining. So, oh, actually, I'll tell you about this place first, and then I'll tell you about mining. So, Komodo is sort of divided up into North and South Islands. The North Islands are warmer than the Southern Islands, just because of where they're situated in the current. And the Southern Islands have a gigantic amount of non-photosynthetic life. So, this one particular dive site is called Cannibal Rock. And I guess it has that name because whoever named it had found, when they showed up, 2 Komodo dragons trying to eat each other, so they thought it was an appropriate name, and I thought, well, yeah, that's good. So Cannibal Rock is this dive site, and it's in this weird little bay that doesn't really look like it's gonna have a whole lot of life. The water clarity is not amazing, but when you get down there, it is just every inch of rock is completely covered. And so there were just these gigantic colonies of Tubastria coral just everywhere, sun coral everywhere. And I kept thinking this must be the most amazing dive site at night, because Tubastria is not usually out during the day, and this just must look insane at night. But they told me the current picks up and nobody goes there, and I was like, wow, that's disappointing. So who knows, maybe next time. But on top of that, the crinoid biodiversity was absolutely incredible. So I photographed all these rocks. I mean, we of course have clownfish, which is great, but the entire backdrop is all crinoids. And in the book, you know, in the inverts of the Pacific book, there were 14 species of crinoids in the book, and I was able to find at least 13 of them while we were there. So I mean, this is one dive site. It's not like all of Indonesia, it's one dive site. So to have that much diversity in one place like that is really unique. So between the crinoids, the anemones, the sponges, and then all the Tubastria, and a ton of tunicates, this was like a very heavily non-photosynthetic area. So I would love to know more about the region. Like this specific spot would be pretty cool to know more about. Oh yes, obligatory macro. So peacock mantis shrimp, of course. That's a classic of the Indo-Pacific. They're just very photogenic and always lovely to see. One of the most colorful of the mantis shrimp varieties out there. Definitely a good one for photos. Cuttlefish everywhere. Constant source of inspiration for photographers. They're very fun to watch eat because they've got tentacles that shoot right out of the middle that are just feeding tentacles. And you never see it coming. They're very quick and primarily like to eat shrimp, so you can stalk them around the reef. Oh, of course, nice mushroom corals. Lots to see there. Tons of coral reef or coral variety in that regard. Leaf scorpion fish. You know, lots of species that we don't frequently see in the aquarium trade because they just tend not to do particularly well in captivity, but they are wonderful to see in person. And Taenionotus is specifically a nice looking one. They also have a lot of filter feeders, so you can pretty regularly see whale sharks in all areas of Indonesia. So sort of a nice opportunity to get to swim with these gentle giants. And mantas. So a cool thing that kind of inspired what turned into a story for my other magazine was this manta ray. So while we were underwater, we had this wonderful dive. Like, it was an incredible dive, got to shoot everybody diving together, was really happy with how it turned out. Had an unexpected manta just blow through on the dive site, just a beautiful day. And when we came up, started kind of finishing breakfast, and Sylvia, who was on the trip, got a phone call, and it was coming from the UN. And we were like, oh, okay, well, UN phone calls are not usually great, but she didn't seem upset. So what had gone on is while we had been underwater on our dive, a really big change had happened. So deep sea mining has become a topic of a lot of contention lately. And the organization that governs deep sea mining is the International Seabed Authority. So until the vote that happened this day, there was a guy in charge who was very pro-mining, very much okay with the idea of going down there and mining the deep sea. he was outed while we were on this dive. There was a huge vote that happened, and he got replaced with a young female Brazilian oceanographer who is pretty much a 180 on his perspective, which was, it's great news for the ocean. And there aren't usually a lot of legislative wins that happen that are this large, where you think, wow, there's actually a chance to like kind of turn the tide on this. So a bit of background about deep sea mining. So I didn't know how it actually started, but here's a crazy story. So when we were recording our interviews, Dr. Sylvia Earle said something about deep sea mining and said offhandedly, well, you know, it all started off as a cover-up, right? And I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know what that means, but you'll have to tell me. So after looking into this story, the reason that deep sea mining is even on our radar is because of a CIA Russian cover-up story back at the end of the 60s. So let me tell you. So it involves a billionaire, a lot of crazy nuclear submarine stuff, and a really fancy plan to recover those things. So in 1968, so like we're talking solidly into the Cold War, there was a Russian nuclear sub armed with ballistic missiles that went down in this area, in this Clarion-Clipperton zone, which is between Hawaii and the United States. So the Russians thought that it was actually somewhere out here that it went down, but it didn't. So technically it was within our exclusive economic zone, which is like the 200 miles that surround a country, right? So we didn't say anything, but the CIA was like, hey, by the way, we know that there's a sub down here and we would really like to collect what's on it. There's a lot of useful intelligence. Now, mind you, this is in about 3 miles of water. It's a lot of water to get through, and there just are not vessels out there that were capable of retrieving something like this, especially covertly. So the CIA and the Department of Defense drew up a very quiet contract with Howard Hughes, the billionaire, and asked him if he might want to make a purpose-built vessel to go try to retrieve this. And he said, yeah, sure, let's go for it. So then spent the next 3 years building this giant vessel called the Glomar Explorer. And he did this whole thing under the front that he was going to be mining the deep sea for polymetallic nodules. So polymetallic nodules are these guys. So it's basically a little fragment of something that maybe started off as a shark tooth or a piece of rock or anything else, a piece of coral. And because the deep sea is so heavy in nutrients, these sediment, that they form like a crust around these little pieces, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, but very slowly. This is an extremely slow process. Tens of millions of years it takes for these things to form. Now, all of them are covered in these heavy metals that we use for so many different things in our electronics. So they're loaded with like nickel and cobalt and all the things that we're generally mining for on land. So the idea is, of course, that, well, maybe we'll just go get these instead. Well, that was what Howard Hughes said he was going to be doing, even though that's not at all what he was going to be doing. So the only reason the deep sea mining even became a thing that we paid attention to was because a billionaire had made up a fake story about it to cover up us trying to retrieve ballistic missiles. So kind of a nuts story that I had no idea even existed until that offhanded comment when we were in Indonesia. So that said, learned a lot about polymetallic nodules and all of this stuff, but in general, deep sea mining is not thought to be a very sustainable activity. So it gets sort of billed as like a way to provide materials for the green revolution that we need to have. Well, when you look at how difficult it is to mine deep sea nodules, the cost, and I mean it is a colossal cost, and the fact that all the creatures that live in these expanses of polymetallic nodules don't live anywhere else. So these are completely unique ecosystems where the things that live there don't live anywhere else in the ocean. And the nodules are the substrate upon which they grow. So even to say that we're going to carefully remove them, I mean, they kind of create this narrative that like there's a little robot that's going to come pick up the nodules, and that is absolutely not what's happening. It's essentially a gigantic vacuum cleaner that sucks them all the way up to the surface, cleans them, and then lets out this gigantic plume of sediment through the entire mesopelagic water column, which is, of course, not a good thing. So overall, deep sea mining is something we shouldn't be doing. And the thing that's sort of fascinating about the current place in which we find ourselves is that generally extractive industries happen, and then we don't know about how bad they are until long after, and it's too late to do anything about it. Deep sea mining is currently such a nascent industry that it hasn't begun yet in any serious capacity. So like this is probably the first major extractive industry that we've actually had a chance to stop before it actually gets going. So anytime you see information going on about deep sea mining, if there's a petition to sign encouraging your government to stand against it, please do take that opportunity, because this is not something that we usually get a chance to comment on before it's too late. So that was a really cool, unexpected thing to get to learn about while we were in Indonesia, and that made it into the book and is a couple different stories that I've used for a few different magazines. So environmental journalism can wind up being sort of not what you expect it to be. Oh, and of course, the obligatory Komodo shot. You have to. I mean, yeah, it's a weird lizard. They're great to see. So where are we headed next? Oh, we're headed to the Pacific Northwest, funny enough. So one good thing that happened for me anyway, during COVID, was that it made me travel to different places. So my magazine that I work for in Australia, of course I do a lot of international travel, and it just became too difficult. It was just really too hard to do. And I started doing a lot more exploration around the United States. So I'm from Chicago, that's where I live, but you can get in your car and drive anywhere, really. So I got kind of hooked on coming to California and Oregon. So it eventually turned into this story, river snorkeling in the Pacific Northwest. And I love snorkeling as an option because it doesn't, like, no one's limited by that, right? Like, anyone can take a mask and go stick their face in the water and see what there is to be seen. It's accessible for kids, for adults, for anyone of any age, and our rivers have incredible stories to be told. There are so many species that nobody pays attention to unless they have really obvious economic significance, like any of the salmonids. Of course, people know more about trout and salmon. But when it comes to darters or chubs or shiners, people are like, it's another fish. It's another brown fish. And it's not another brown fish. There are so many cool stories to be told out there and so many species that need our attention. And it's great to be out there and checking them out whenever you have a chance. There are also some wonderful amphibians, which you will get a sneak peek at. But one of the river systems that I kind of fell in love with there was the Smith River. So the Smith River and the Chetco have become two of my favorite places to go because the diversity along their stretches is just incredible. And part of my reason for wanting to spend so much time there once I discovered how many cool things there were to see is because I plan to do a project that I'm just applying for a grant for that's snorkeling the entire length of the Smith River. So all 25 miles of the Smith, once it converges, you know, it's got three forks, and once they come together, it's 25 miles from there by Gasky Junction all the way out to the coast. So I would like to do that as a project, and if you're going to apply for serious grant funding for something, you kind of need proof of concept. So I've spent the last sort of 4 years slowly collecting information to make this a palatable option for someone to throw money at. So let me give you a little bit of photo background about this. So this was actually my first trip to see the Smith River in California. And I thought, holy cow, that is a gorgeous river. I need to know more about this. And one of the cool things about the Smith is that it's not only currently undammed, but it's never been dammed. And in California, and actually the entire West Coast, it's kind of rare to find a huge river system that has never been dammed. Like that's really not common. So to be able to study and look at a river like that, that's so unique in that quality, and compare it to others that have been, especially now that there are so many dam removal projects and restoration efforts, it's really useful information to have, to be able to look at the completely intact waterway and be able to look at one that isn't and say, oh, this is what we need to be doing better in order to restore those rivers to the glory that they once had. So the Smith River is kind of the perfect one for that, and there is so much to see in it. So it's known for these gorgeous emerald waters. And of course it doesn't look like this along its entire length. You know, some of it's more turbid, some of it's a little bit less clear, but when you think of the Smith, you think of emerald waters. Like, it is just absolutely a stunner of a river system. And there are so many animals that live there. It also runs through part of the redwoods. And the cool part about this section of the story is that so many salmonid species come from the ocean. They run up these rivers, they spawn, and then of course a lot of them die. Well, that protein, that oceanic protein that comes from krill, shrimps, crabs, everything that they've eaten out in the ocean is now in the forest. So when they do tree ring analysis and look at where all of the nutrients in these trees are coming from, it's marine in origin, and that's because of the salmon bringing it up the river. So this transfer of energy and transfer of calories and protein all the way up into these forest ecosystems is just such a cool thing to imagine. Like there's ocean protein in the trees. I mean, if you can't see the connection in that, like you wouldn't see it in anything else. And it's a neat piece of the story that I love being able to show. The river, of course, presents a lot of really neat photographic opportunities. I like doing half and half shots like this so you can kind of see what's happening on both sides. And it's sort of what you get as a snorkel perspective. Like if you're snorkeling, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see half above, half below, and get an idea for everything that's going on between the two and how they're related. Coho salmon are a big species that you see here, Chinook as well, and several other species. But they're, of course, of major economic significance. So like that's why, of course, salmon always get focused on so much, and they should be, I agree. But there are tons of species that get completely overlooked. And sometimes that's as simple as their food sources. So I've started spending a lot more time documenting the things that they eat. So tons of these species, these more sort of ephemeral species, are dragonflies, damselflies, caddisflies, Dobson flies. These all have aquatic larvae stages, and if rivers are not clean and not conducive to their survival, then salmon and their fry will also not have anything to eat. So aquatic insects are a major indicator of river health, and the Smith is just chock full of these things. So this is a stonefly larva, and you can see around its legs, it's got these little fuzzy bits. So those are its gills. Of course, those eventually go away when they molt into an adult. But they spend between 6 months and 2 years underwater feeding off of plankton and biofilms and all the other things that grow in rivers and detritus, and provide salmon and trout and their smolt with a lot of the nutrients that they need. Caddisflies are another really common one that you see that build this crazy little cocoon. So caddisflies have sort of like a silk type saliva that they secrete, and it sticks to all of the things around them, whether that's sand or bits of bark or anything that's left over in the river, and they create this cocoon around themselves. So they'll live underwater like this for, like I said, sometimes up to 2 years, and then they hatch out into the caddisfly. So during that time, this is a major source of food for a ton of different fish species that inhabit the rivers, as well as birds. So there's this whole section of the river that has all these tiny creatures. Also, when you get into the shallow bits around the edge, you get a ton of amphibian biodiversity. So this was a section that had tadpoles from endangered yellow-legged frogs. And this is, a transforming frog. I know it's kind of hard to see, but like its mouth is kind of in between stages. It still has a tadpole mouth, but it's got a frog body. So it's on its way out of the river. But super cool to be able to photograph these guys. And I mean, they're not much bigger than like a big thumbnail at this point. So I mean, this is a very small frog. But when they all, metamorphose out at once, it's quite a spectacle. So these are all amazing things you get to see. There's also big stuff, which I was really stoked to find. So about 2 years ago, it's coming up on 2 years ago, August, there was a particularly low water event in the Smith. And a friend who is a fisheries biologist said, so-and-so has seen sturgeon in the river. And I thought, well, I don't know, that doesn't sound very likely, but it's worth looking, right? So we went to go check out the sturgeon, and they were there. There was about a 30-foot deep hole in the river that it was all big chunky gravel bed, and there were about 30 or 35 of these adult green sturgeon in the river. And these are just nuts fish. Like, you see them in photos and you don't gather how crazy they are until you see them in person. And normally if you see sturgeon, you'll see them in the Colorado. You'll see white sturgeon there and the water clarity is awful, and you only see them when they're like 2 inches in front of your face. This was beautiful visibility and gorgeous clear water. So to be able to see these fish like that was really unique, super exciting, got to do photos and video, and as far as I know, I haven't seen other video like it, so I think this will kind of help bolster wanting to do a grant-funded project to snorkel through the Smith. I think this will be definitely useful footage to have. So the fun part is that we couldn't really go in the normal way. So as I mentioned, I want to snorkel the whole Smith. This was not a year that we could have snorkeled the whole Smith because the water level was so low, and there were tons of spots where you couldn't get over them. That's why the sturgeon were there, because they kind of got trapped because of the low water level. So for us to get in there, we couldn't paddle up, we had to climb down. So we rappelled with all of our gear, camera, dive gear, everything, off of a 70-foot cliff onto a big pile of rocks, and then flung ourselves into the river and got to see some great stuff. So this is just a fast little, kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at. So some aerial footage straight down into the Smith. Carried all of our gear down through the trees. That's actually Jen Hayes, the lady who you saw on the front of the book before. I made her come because she's actually a sturgeon biologist. That's what she does. So she was really excited. Anyway, so we had to come down this cliff. That's our entry point, those huge rocks. We had a lot of gear, had to bring, you know, our underwater camera stuff, dive tanks, BCDs, fins, masks, snorkels, all the stuff. Everything had to come down with us. And got geared up at the bottom. The water's about 63 degrees and looks like this. And I mean, I don't know if I'll ever see conditions like this again, which is why I was just like, for 2 days, did nothing but dive. Like I dived until I was too cold to be diving anymore, because I just didn't know if I'd ever see this again. And I may not. I did go back last year, there were sturgeon, but there were only a handful of them, and they weren't in the spot, this spot. And this whole area looked completely different, because then they had a ton of water over the last winter that probably reshaped that entire section of the river. So this is why you kind of have to seize the opportunities when you have them, because you just never know what you're going to see again. So yeah, this was just our little snippet of diving the Smith, and hopefully will become part of a larger project that I hope will put a little bit more attention on the importance of looking at these freshwater systems. So in addition to that, some of the other species that I really enjoy, oh yeah, and this was kind of cool, I forgot about this slide. Friends who live there were in the process of writing a field guide about the entire Klamath-Siskiyou area, and decided, because we finally had photos of sturgeon where you could see them, that they were going to add a section about the sturgeon. So by getting to see them that year, we got to have a little section in the book talking about sturgeon of the region, and actually have a photo where you can see them in it.
Oh my God.
I know, they're so cute. So, as I said, I do also have a thing for amphibians. And the Smith and the Chetco have a plethora of those as well. So this is a rough-skinned newt, Pterica granulosa. It's not an uncommon species at all. I mean, you can find them all the way from San Francisco up to Vancouver, BC, so they're around. It's not like an endangered species or anything, but there's still so much that we don't know about them. So in general, newts and salamanders tend to lay masses of eggs, so then you can find them in vernal pools. These guys, they'll only lay one egg at a time, and they'll lay them on the underside of a leaf. So like trying to find a single newt egg in some leaf litter, it's kind of an impossibility. So I've still got a chunk of the life cycle, like they're juveniles that I don't have footage of, but I'm plotting. I have plans. I'd like to collect a few of them and try to breed them in captivity, and then film and photograph them as they're developing. So that's kind of an ongoing maybe project. But I was just so kind of attached to these guys after I saw them for the first time. And I mean, look at those faces. So yeah, there's a mating pair, of course. In the whole spring, you'll see them in all the edges of the waterways. When they're in their little mating embrace, amplexus, it can last anywhere from a couple hours to a couple days. So you'll see newts just attached to each other for pretty long stretches of time. The good thing about this is they don't care what you do while they're attached, which is amazing for photos. So this is actually taken with the probe lens. I've got it with me, but the lens is like this long, skinny, and the front 6 inches of it are waterproof, so you can just kind of lay on the edge of the river and pop it into the water. And yeah, they just kind of sat there looking at me like, okay, maybe you should leave. Not leaving, not leaving. So got some good footage. Also got some cool, I mean, it's not a vernal pool, but it was this little side channel off the river where the water was real stagnant, real still, and quite warm, a lot warmer than the rest of the river. So it just had this explosion of hair algae. But it's amazing habitat for a lot of these animals. The newts hang out there. I saw a garter snake hunting them in here. So that's the cool thing too. That's another piece of the story. So these newts are extremely toxic. And there's only one animal that regularly eats them, which is the garter snake. So the garter snakes of this region, and I don't just mean garter snakes in general, like there's specifically the garter snakes that live here, have adapted to the newt toxin, which is the same toxin that's in pufferfish. It's tetrodotoxin, same thing. And it's kind of this toxic arms race between the two where the newts have to keep getting more toxic so that the snakes can't eat them, but the snakes keep getting more and more resistant to the toxin. And the crazy thing is that they finally figured out what makes the snakes able to eat them, and it's a really small mutation in like their sodium channel blockers in their cells, and it also means that they can't move very well. So the more resistant they are to the toxin, the more clumsy they are. So when you see the snakes trying to eat these really toxic newts, they can hardly move. Like they're falling over. They look absolutely ridiculous. So like there's obviously a limit where they can't survive being able to eat the toxin anymore. So it'll be really interesting to kind of see where that story plays out. Because I mean, this is like an active evolution story, which is really cool to watch. And I mean, they have a generation time of 1.5 years. So you can kind of see what's going on in a natural environment like this by monitoring these two populations. So here's one little, this is like a 60-second sizzle reel from the newt film. I've got like a 3.5-minute version of it that I'm working on that I'm gonna try to submit to Jackson Wild Film Festival this year. I've got another month left before I have to have it done. But it's gonna be like a 3.5-minute version of this that I'm daring to narrate. God, it's terrifying. But I've collected some cool footage over the last few years, and I think it will hopefully do well. This does have music to it, but I didn't want to try to bother with it in here. That's a little too difficult, I think, for a first time. But you can see it's just an absolutely gorgeous ecosystem. And we have a question. Yeah, tell me.
I am curious, as the garter snakes eat the newts,
Yeah.
they're poisonous. Do the garter snakes become poisonous?
No.
Like dart frogs.
Exactly. So very good question. So do the snakes become toxic as they're eating toxic food? No. We don't know why, so they're obviously processing it instead of retaining it, because I mean, you know, with dart frogs and lots of other species, nudibranchs, things like that, when they eat something toxic, they become toxic, and then it's beneficial for them. But that's not the case with the snakes. So it's kind of odd, and not what I would have expected. So yeah, because I had the same question. I had to go doing a lot of searching and thought, really? That's odd.
They interrupt, but curiosity.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Phil. Yeah, there's a Sierra garter snake and sort of your standard garter snake that both eat them. And they do, there's some evidence, I don't think they eat them on a regular basis, but some of the spotted owls have been seen eating newts, but like not on a regular basis. I think it's just like, that have the toxin. Yeah, because I think the Sierra, there are two newts, yeah, that both have the toxin. This happens to be like the most common one though, so you see them everywhere. Yeah, anyway, it's a really neat piece of the story that I look forward to focusing on. Oh, where was that? Okay, so that's the Pacific Northwest snorkeling adventure. I would recommend, if you ever have an opportunity to get your face in a river, please do it. It's very rewarding. You never know what you're gonna see, and I'm pretty sure it's always going to be refreshing. So I will end on a last project that I'm excited about, and we've recently gotten really good news about it. So I've been working on a self-funded video project for the last 5 years with a business partner of mine who lives in Austin, Texas. And we've got this series called Protected Waters. So we're both scuba divers. We've both been working in the dive industry for a really long time. And we like to tell weird stories. So we came up with this concept to go scuba diving in different protected waters around the United States. And sometimes this is in places that you know very well, but not that you would really think of as a dive destination. So the first one that we did, we went to Yellowstone. So Yellowstone has Yellowstone Lake, which is actually a great dive destination as long as you don't mind cold water. It's about 42 or 43 degrees year round, so dry suit, definitely dry suit. Or if you want to only go down for 20 minutes or so, you could probably stay in the 7 mil, but it's definitely chilly. The cool thing about Yellowstone Lake is that it's changed a lot over the years. So I'm sure we all know that Yellowstone's very famous for its volcanic activity. And Yellowstone Lake has changed with every one of those volcanoes. So the most recent eruption was 240,000 years ago, and kind of reshaped Yellowstone Lake. So where we go diving is where this little star is up top. And the top third, this like little bubble on the top, is actually within the caldera of the old volcano. And the rest is outside of it. So what you see in the northern section is not what you see in the southern section, because they're pretty much cut off and have been subjected to very different conditions over the years. So we dive in this area called the Spire Field. So this is a spire. So these are about 25, 30 foot tall jet black spires that stick up off the bottom. It starts in about like 40, 45 feet of water, you start to see these, and they come out of nowhere because the visibility is terrible. So you're in there and it's just this murky, mucky green, you don't see anything, and all of a sudden there's just this huge shadow in front of you, and you're like, oh my God, this is very uncomfortable. But once you realize that it's just a spire, it's not really that scary, but it's got like that, you know, your brain doesn't like it, I'll just say that. But you push through and you get it anyway. So the way that these formed is actually pretty cool. So there's not a lot of, really, life in general in these lakes, then a ton of bacterial filaments, some plants, and now fish. But over the years, 640,000 years ago, it was primarily bacteria. So all of the minerals that came from this huge volcanic explosion started condensing around the bacterial filaments that were growing up off of the ground. And eventually, they just layered out, kind of similar to the polymetallic nodules we talked about in the deep sea, that create these huge 3D underwater structures. It's like this giant tower underwater. And they're a great place for life to congregate because there's not really any other structure in the lake. It's just flat, silty lake bottom. But then you have these. So you'll get amphipods and snails and freshwater sponges, hydroids, and fish. So everything kind of congregates around these. And the reason that we kind of wanted to tell this story is because it's all tied into the Yellowstone cutthroat trout. So the Yellowstone cutthroat trout is the native species there. It's a beautiful fish, but they have been heavily impacted by the presence of lake trout. So, cutthroat trout's about this side. A Yellowstone, or a lake trout is like this size. So it's a predator of the native cutthroat trout. The cutthroat trout, though, eat these. So these amphipods kind of form the basis of the food chain in a lot of different areas around Yellowstone Lake. So if you can look at the population density of the amphipods, you get an idea of how many cutthroat trout are eating them versus how many lake trout are then eating the cutthroat trout. So it's a way of kind of looking at the ecosystem from a bottom-up perspective. So without having to sample a sensitive species like cutthroat trout, which is already having trouble surviving, you don't want to be taking those fish out when you don't have to. So it's best to look at their food source so that you don't have to have as much of an impact on them. So the big issue, of course, with the Yellowstone Lake food web is what we call a trophic cascade. So by adding lake trout, and this was accidental, it added a layer to the food chain. So it has this knock-on effect all the way down that you can monitor all the way down to the gomerid amphipods. So they are pretty active predators. These are lake trout with all a bunch of young cutthroats in them. So they can eat anywhere between 3 and 7 young cutthroats a day. So any progress that you're making with replacing the natives, it's pretty hard to counteract how voracious of a predator this fish is. That said, within the last probably 10 years, there's been an incredible effort by all 3 states that Yellowstone is part of to gill net a lot of these fish. So the interesting thing about lake trout is that they don't spawn in the same part of the lake or in the same way that the cutthroats do. So it allows to have some sort of biological control. So the cutthroat trout spawn in the tributaries as opposed to the lake trout, which spawn in the lake. So if you put out these gill nets, you're really not risking catching Yellowstone cutthroats, you're only getting lake trout. So what they do is they take all of the carcasses from the lake trout, they take what they can from the meat because it's good eating, and then they dump all of the carcasses back onto the area that they spawn because, of course, this triggers this massive decomposition event, sucks all of the oxygen out of the water, and if you dump this on top of a spawning ground where all of their eggs are trying to develop, they can't. So it just cuts out all of the oxygen, the fry or the eggs at that point die, and this has been a really successful program with bringing down the number of lake trout that are in the lake. Every year they remove between, I think they said 30 and 80,000 lake trout, which is, I mean, I can't even believe that the lake can support that many. It's kind of unbelievable, but they do. Has been a really successful initiative, which is great news. Here's just a quick little 30-second, if I can get it to play. Yeah, so this is just our little clip-through trailer from the film. So we're now on our 4th film in this series. So we did Yellowstone. Then we went to Laguna Madre, which is outside of Texas. It's along Padre Island National Seashore. And it is the largest hypersaline lagoon in the world, and is home to a lot of different turtle species that require it for a different part of their life. So we've done that. Then we also, about a year and a half ago, went to La Jolla. So we did Southern California marine protected areas and focused on telling a story about the leopard sharks that come there to mate in the summer. If you like seeing sharks really close up, it's an amazing place to go, and it's just a snorkel spot. So you can go into La Jolla Cove and, like in July and August, see this huge collection. I mean, sometimes hundreds of leopard sharks show up, and I mean, they're as harmless as a shark is going to get. It kind of is a nurse shark shape with the mouth on the bottom. They feed off the bottom. They're not going to bite anybody, you know. So it's a great shark to be able to see super close up and in person. So we did a film about that. That was our Exploring La Jolla. And we're in the process of editing one that's about acidification in fresh and saltwater ecosystems. So we went to Florida for the marine part, and Alpena, Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in Michigan for the freshwater part. So we are almost done with that. Should be done by the end of the month. And the good news about it is that we are currently in preliminary talks with PBS about adopting this as a series, which would be super exciting. So we call it Protected Waters because that's what we came up with, but we want to turn into a whole series about scuba diving in America. So it would be called Sea America, spelled S-E-A. And we'll see where it goes. Obviously, we're sort of at the beginning stages of this and don't know if it's going to be successful, but we are in the process of cutting together a 30-minute pilot with our production team, and who knows, maybe it'll be on PBS. Never know. So that would be exciting. Anyway, this is sort of all to say that you can find a story anywhere if you want to look hard enough. And it doesn't really matter where you live. Exploration is much more a mindset than the places you go. Because you can choose to see anywhere through the lens of exploration if you want to learn something about a place. And we all have a tendency to ignore the places that we grew up because they're there and we take them for granted. And we always want to go somewhere far-flung to find something new and exciting. But anything can be new and exciting depending on how you choose to see it. So go out there and start seeing stuff. All right, I think that's it. And if anybody's got questions, I'm around. And thanks for listening.
Are you familiar with Al Giddings Jr.?
Oh, yes. I'm very familiar with Al.
Him and I used to dive.
You did?
In Orca, scuba diving.
Oh, that's so cool. A legend.
Yeah, him and I were good buddies.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a big name.
Texas name.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Very good.
That's awesome.
Did you explore the Gardner River in Alden, Montana?
No, so not yet. It's actually a place that I've talked about going a lot and would like to go back. There's a ton to see. It's another one of these spots that's just...
In the last couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Floods, things thinned out, so it's like
Okay.
3 feet deep only for most of it.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Where I was there.
Interesting snorkel spot.
Yeah.
Go back with a mask. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Are you want me to leave this on?
Any other questions?
That was wonderful.
Thank you. I'll also be here. So yes. Oh, so some of them are on my YouTube channel. Others you'll just have to wait for. But I do try to post as much content as I can just because it's weird stuff that nobody really pays attention to. So yeah. But yeah, I have an Instagram and a YouTube channel, so I can let you know. Yes, I will. Yeah, I'll share my handles and stuff, so if people want to check them out, that'd be great. Yeah. Oh yes, I definitely do want to talk about Amazonas. So I'm sure there's a mix of aquarium keeping here, fresh and salt. So I brought some magazines. I've got a couple corals, a couple Amazonas. If anybody really wants one, you're more than welcome to grab it, but I don't have a lot. That said, I don't know how we want to do like a raffle-y kind of thing, but I do have 2 magazine subscriptions that I've been cleared to give away should anyone want to subscribe and read a really cool freshwater magazine. So it'd be a free subscription to Amazonas for a year. Yeah. I know, 2. I was like, are you sure? So yeah, I don't know. I think they have a plan. I don't have a plan.
Alex, the internet would like to know where they can find you on YouTube.
Okay, so yeah, YouTube is, I have a channel called Blue Your Mind, B-L-U-E. So Blue Your Mind is that. And then my Instagram is noblue.nogreen. So yeah, that's me. Thank you. Oh, of course. Oh, you've got all the people. That's awesome.
You know, Al saved Fred from Great White.
I heard that story. I wasn't sure if it was true, but I heard that story.
They owned a dive shop with everything.
Yeah,
I used to dive every Sunday.
that's awesome. How cool.
He's still alive.
I know. It's good. Got to keep everybody going. Diving keeps you alive, I promise. You have to be pickled one way or another. For me, it's the salt water. All right. We good? Can I give this to you? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And there you go.
Thanks so much, Alex.
Thank
One
you.
more round of applause. I know we just ended. We can do it again. All right. So in a moment, we will take a break, and then we'll get started with the auction. But before we do that, I forgot to ask if we have anyone with us for the
Yes. Yes. Right there. You park behind the marine room. Like
We're going to start on this side and kind of work our
Where is
way
it?
around.
Yeah, you park here, like along this. Yeah, the marine room. This is the restaurant. You park along this road and you walk your ass right out.
And then you go this way?
Yep. Yeah, and sometimes you'll see them right here.
Because
I mean, like, yeah, right up.
literally, my son is like right there.
You gotta go.
Because you have the University of San Diego.
Oh,